Can you say hi? Sorry for that little cutout. I had to go lay her down for a nap. She was like super fussy. Okay, but anyways, as I was saying, also I put this up because the lighting in here is like horrible. Sorry about that if y'all can tell. But I wanted to make this video to talk about teen pregnancy and getting pregnant young versus having a child at like 25, 26, after you're married. I wasn't going to make this, even though I've been wanting to, just because there's been a lot of talk about how people think that having a kid whenever you're 16, 17, 18, you're not going to be as good of a parent as you would be if you were 23 and 24 and 25. So I just want to share this to show that having a kid young, it doesn't ruin your life. It's not the end of the world, and you can still be a good parent being so young. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about finding out I was pregnant and going through the pregnancy, and I'll probably stop it right there, just because right now I'm 19. I had her almost a year ago, and I'm pregnant again with another girl. And I've gotten a lot of judgmental, like, oh, you just had a baby and you're having a baby again. And like I said with her, I'll say it with the new baby too. It wasn't planned. It wasn't expected. But we made the choice to have sex, and we have to deal with our choices. I guess that's a good way to put it. But this is about her. Okay, so I found out I was pregnant with her when I think it was right after I turned 18 or 17. I was 17. I don't know. The father I thought was 18. He was actually 16 at the time. He was 16 whenever she was born. I'm trying to think of how it all happened. Anyways, me and him met through friends, and we actually ended up being like really good friends before we started dating, and we were friends for a while before we made anything official. And then after we started dating, I moved in with him, and I moved out of my sister's house and her husband because they had custody of me from whenever I was younger. That's also another topic that I won't cover right now, but I moved out of their house and I moved in with him and his family. And about a few months after I moved in with him, we found out I was pregnant. Whenever we found out, I didn't think I was pregnant. I mean, part of me was like, that's off, but I didn't think I was actually pregnant, whereas, he thought, he was like, you need to take a test, I think you're pregnant. And I was like, no, there's no way I'm pregnant, it's not happening. So, whenever he started thinking I was pregnant, we were dating. He was a junior in high school, but he was doing the whole graduate early plan. So he was graduating that year, so he was technically a senior. And once we found out, I actually got out of school, and neither of us were working. The time we found out, I ended up getting a job later on. I'll get to that in just a second. But he was in school still. So whenever we found out, he actually told me to go buy some tests, and I was like, I'm not buying a test because I actually don't think I'm pregnant, so there's like no need for a test. And a few weeks after that, he told his mom that he thinks I'm pregnant, and he had his mom go buy the test, and they just wanted me to take them. And after his mom gave me the test, I was like, yeah, I'll take them. But I ended up not taking them for about a week or two, just because I didn't think I was pregnant. Well, one night me and him were laying in bed talking, And he was like, you need to take that test, you know, you're having weird cravings, you're really emotional. And I was like, I'm not pregnant. And he was like, you cry for nothing out of nowhere, like something's wrong. And I was like, no. And he was like, well, you're either pregnant or you're depressed. And he was like, and I don't know why you'd be depressed. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, well, with everything going on. And I was like, let's not talk about that. So anyways, he was like, just promise me you'll take that test in the morning. And I was like, I'll take the test if after this you don't bring up me taking the test anymore. And he was like, okay, deal. So the next morning came, and he was actually getting up for school, and he got me up and he was like, hey, can you take the test now? And I was like, are you really waking me up at 5 o'clock in the morning to take a freaking pregnancy test? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, okay. So he went into one restroom to take a shower, and I went into the other to take the test. And after I took it, I set it down, and I went into the restroom he was in, and he was like, where's the test? And I was like, well, I left it in there because it says you have to let it sit and then check in so often. And he was like, well, go check it. And I was like, it's only been like 2 minutes. I'm not checking it right now. Just calm down. And then like 5 minutes later, I think, he was like, go check it. He was getting out of the shower, and I was like, all right, whatever. So I left the restroom, and I was going to go back to the restroom where I took the test at, but instead I went to the room to get my phone, and I texted my sister, and I was like, hey, are you up? And then that's whenever I went back to the restroom, and I just grabbed the test, and I was going to walk back into the other restroom where he was at so we could look at it. And as I was walking back, you have to like go through the living room, and as I was walking, his mom was in there, and I didn't even really look until after I walked in the living room, and then I looked down at it, and I looked back up, and I was like, I looked back down, and it was positive, and I just stood there, and I was like, holy crap. And his mom was like, what's wrong? And I was like shaking, and I handed it to her, and she was like, does Donald know? And I was like, no, he's in the shower. She was like, well, you better go tell him. So I took the test from her, and I went and I knocked on the door, and he was getting dressed out of the shower. And I was like, hey, and he was like, what's wrong? And I was like shaking. I handed it to him, and after I handed it to him, I just automatically started crying, like straight bawling. And he was like, oh my God, you're pregnant. Why are you crying? Why are you so sad? Like, what's wrong? And I was like, what do you mean what's wrong? Like, I'm pregnant. Neither of us have a job. Freaking, I'm like not even in school right now. Like, you're the only one in school, and neither of us are working. Like, we have no income. Like, we're living with your parents. It was just horrible, and I was like freaking out, and he was like, just calm down, it's gonna be fine, you know, we made the decision to have sex, we're gonna stick with this. And he was like, it's not a bad thing, you say everything happens for a reason, so maybe everything happens for a reason. And he was just trying to calm me down, and I was like freaking out, and his mom kept trying to calm me down, and I was like, can we not tell anyone this for a few days? So the first, I want to say it was about the second day of us all knowing, we finally decided to tell his dad. And I was so scared to let his dad know, just because his dad was like the strict one. But they were all really supportive. His dad was like, well, you know, there's nothing y'all can do, just know that we'll be here for y'all. And then he was like, it better be a boy. But anyways, they were all really supportive, so that made it a lot better. Through like the first couple of weeks, I was still just really scared and nervous, and I was like, what are we gonna do? I was filling out job applications, I was trying to get a job. Leading up to all of this, we didn't think I could have kids. Well, I didn't think I could have kids. I had the Depo shot a little before this, and it actually gave me a cyst on my ovary, and I had to stop getting it. And all the doctors I went to told me that I couldn't have kids, that I wouldn't have kids. So I literally thought that I couldn't have kids. I didn't think I could get pregnant. And before Donald, I was still sexually active, and I never got pregnant. So I was like, why all of a sudden am I pregnant? Like, it was just a lot for me to take in, and my anxiety was through the roof, and I was just going through a bunch, and it was just hard. And I was so scared to tell my sister and her husband. I didn't tell them until after I filled out job applications and I started working. Then I texted my sister and I told her, and they weren't upset as I thought they were going to be. They took it a lot better than I figured they would have. I actually met up with my sister because they lived a town over. I actually met up with her a little after that, and she was like, so what are you going to do? Have y'all thought of all y'all's options? Just know that there's more than one option here. And I was like, yeah, we know, but we're going to keep it. And she was like, okay. And she was like, if that's what you want to do, then I support you. She was like, I just don't want you to feel like you're stuck. And I was like, no, of course not. I don't feel like I'm stuck. And she was like, okay. So anyways, she was a lot more supportive than I figured too, which made it really easy also. So the only really people, family-wise, that I had left to tell that I talked to in my family was my mom and dad. And we all lived really far away from each other. Like, my mom lived in Missouri and my dad lived in West Texas. So I messaged my dad first, and I was like, hey Dad, I need to talk to you. And he was like, is everything okay? And I was like, well, I'm pregnant. And he was like, is this a prank or something? I don't know how he said it. And I was like, no, I'm actually pregnant. And he was like, well, I'm happy for you. Do you know what it is? And I was like, no. And he was like, are you going to keep it? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, okay, well, if you need anything, just let me know. And I was like, all right. So anyways, I had my mom left. My mom was probably the main person I was scared to tell. Just because my mom is very judgmental about stuff like that, just because she doesn't want kids following in her footsteps, and that's what she would have seen it as. My mom's not the most supportive person whenever it comes to dating and relationships and family. So I was very scared to tell her, and at first she was really, I don't think she was like trying to be, but she was really judgmental about it. And she was like, quack, quack already knocked you up. And quack, quack is what she called Donald because of his name. And I was like, yeah, I guess he did. And she was like, what are you going to do? And so I explained to her that we're going to keep it. And she was like, well, and she was like, following in my footsteps. And I was like, yeah, like, not much I can do now. But, so throughout the pregnancy, I had a lot of support from Donald's family and from the family that I talked to and on my side, which was really good. That made it a lot easier. Throughout the pregnancy, there was a lot of complications with my blood and my white blood cells, and for like the longest time, we thought I was going to have to do a C-section. And I was telling my OB, I was like, no, I want to do natural, you know, like vaginal birth, vaginal. And she was like, well, we don't know for sure if that's how it's going to go. And as long as the baby's healthy, then that's all that should matter. And I was like, yeah, I completely agree. So we had it set, like, not like set in stone, but, you know, mindset of a C-section. But we ended up not having to do that. And whenever she was born, my due date was July 8th. And she actually ended up breaking my water July 6th. And Emma was born the same day, about 7 hours later. And I had the epidural, of course. And that's pretty much how that happened. There was a lot of judgment from everyone else, like the nurses at my doctor's office, and everyone was like, oh my God, you're so young, you're having a kid. And then whenever people found out that I was working and Donna was in school and wasn't working, they were really judgmental about that. And they were like, so what are you going to do whenever the baby comes? Who's going to be working? And I was like, well, Donald finishes school like 3 months before the baby comes, and then he's going to start working. It was just a lot of stress and everything. But after he graduated, he ended up getting a job. And I quit my job about 8 months pregnant. I quit and he started working, and he's been working ever since. And I stay home with Emma and soon to be the new baby. But I am right now planning on going back to work after this one's born. But I just wanted to share my story and let everyone know that having a child young, I'm pointing back there because she's like sleeping in the other room in her bed. I'm like saying all this just because I want everyone to know having a child young doesn't ruin your life, and it doesn't make you any less of a parent than the 23-year-old you see. Like, you're still the same. Like, I don't know. There's just a lot of talk about, like, oh, you know, you're 16, 17, 18. You're not going to be a good mom. You're not going to be a good dad. but that's not how it is. And I don't want people to see younger parents and think just because they're young, they can't take care of a kid. Yes, it may be harder for younger people financially, just because they can't move out of, like Donald couldn't move out at 16. We couldn't get our own place because he was only 16. So for that reason being, yes, it may be a little more challenging, whereas a 23-year-old can move into wherever they want, you know, because you don't have to have parents' permission and all that. So there are a lot of downfalls to it, but it's not impossible to raise a kid young at all. And having a kid young doesn't make you a bad person or any less of a person than you were before you had a kid. And I think society puts it on teen parents like you're young, you're gonna be a crappy mom, you're just gonna pawn your kid off with your parents, like, and that's not always how it is. In some circumstances I see how it may seem like that with some parents, but not every young teen parent is like that. And I just hate how it's based off of that. So yeah, sorry if I seemed all over the place, but that is my story. And I think Emma's waking up, so I'm gonna end it right here. Thank you for watching. I think that's all I had to say. Alright, bye.